Hey everyone, it's Ben Hardy here, and in today's video, I'm going to be talking about the all-new Ram 1500 because we have some pretty big changes coming for the truck. Before we end this video though, as always, you can save time and money the next time you purchase a car. Link to my car buying guide in the description down below, and if you see more content just like this, then I recommend you subscribe because I post these videos every single day. Let's get into it. So if you are a big Ram fan, then you know that Ram released the 5th generation Ram 1500 in the 2019 model year, and they have, updated the truck over the course of its lifespan, adding things like a heads-up display, a digital rear view camera, and, a potential new powertrain in the very near future, and then also for the 2023 model year, a full digital gauge cluster, and then they've also updated the infotainment system as well. And so, the truck has changed a little bit, but ultimately, if you compare a 2023 Ram 1500 to a 2019 Ram 1500, there are some differences, but not nearly as many as you would think. And so Ram is working on some much bigger changes to make the truck a lot more competitive with the Ford F-150 and with the Chevy Silverado / GMC Sierra. Now, some of these changes might come sooner than the, quote-unquote 6th generation Ram 1500, but all of these changes will most likely be done by this 6th generation Ram 1500. So the first big change that we all know about is the Hurricane powertrain. Stellantis plans on putting this powertrain in a bunch of vehicles to obviously help out with their overall, efficiency across the board and, emissions ratings and everything. And so the Ram 1500 is going to get this powertrain. This powertrain is, at first going to be an option alongside the 5.7 Hemi, and then ultimately it'll most likely completely replace the 5.7 Hemi in the Ram 1500. And, it's not a bad powertrain, right? It's a twin turbo 3-liter inline 6, and the standard power outputs are really solid. It's like around 400 horsepower and close to 500 pound-feet of torque, and then the high output version is like 500 horsepower and over 500 pound-feet of torque, and so it's actually a really strong powertrain for a pickup truck. I mean, Ford, is typically kind of like the leader when it comes to twin turbo engines in trucks, and their standard output EcoBoost 400 horsepower, 500 pound-feet torque. So Ram is right there when it comes to being competitive in their high output. I mean, it actually blows Ford's high output EcoBoost out of the water. Now, Ford obviously also has a hybrid powertrain with their EcoBoost, and this is what leads me to the next big change. Is this new version of the Ram 1500 will have a hybrid powertrain. Now, there is most likely not going to be a standard hybrid powertrain. Stellantis isn't really going down that route. They've kind of just leapfrogged from standard hybrid right into plug-in hybrid. I mean, if you look at Jeep, for example, you've got the 4xe, it's a plug-in hybrid. You don't have any sort of standard hybrid, and so they're going to do the same thing with the Ram 1500. Now, the chances of them just basically taking the 4xe powertrain and throwing it into the Ram 1500 are probably slim to none. It's a great powertrain, but if Chevy has shown us anything, truck buyers don't really like 4 cylinders in pickup trucks, and they're not necessarily the most reliable because of how stressed out they are. I mean, a 4-cylinder engine in a pickup truck, it has to do so much work to move such a big vehicle. And so the hybrid powertrain will most likely use some sort of detuned version of the Hurricane powertrain, or maybe they'll do what Ford basically has done, where they just, put in the regular version of the Hurricane like Ford does. They put in the regular version of the EcoBoost and then just, again, throw a hybrid system with it, and then just have crazy power figures. Toyota does the same thing with the Tundra. That is also, likely. But again, the big thing with this will be plug-in hybrid, so then you'll be able to charge it up, and then, you'll have, probably 30, 40 miles of driving range. That is what most plug-in hybrids in today's market have. So I think that is pretty neat. And then the next big thing is going to be with the styling. So Ram is obviously going to, kind of evolve the styling. Now, something that's become very popular within the automotive industry, and especially within the truck industry, is to just slightly tweak styling, but not completely overhaul. Now, Ram obviously, pretty much overhauled the styling for the 5th generation Ram 1500, but people really like the styling, and so Ram knows this, and so the styling for this new 6th generation Ram will be more of kind of a refreshed look rather than a full redesign look. And it actually works really well because, buyers feel like they're getting something that's slightly newer, slightly more exciting, but it's still familiar enough where they're not completely disgusted with the design. I mean, look at what BMW's done with their SUVs, the new X7, right? Complete design departure when it comes to the front end, and people are like, that thing is hideous. And so, Ram obviously wants to completely avoid that. And then the other thing alongside the powertrain thing that I was mentioning earlier that I forgot to bring up is there is going to be a fully electric Ram 1500. Now, is this going to be built off the 5th generation platform or the 6th generation platform? I mean, it's up in the air at this point. It will most likely not be built on either. It'll be built on its own platform, and then the 6th generation will be a completely different platform, right? Because electric vehicle platforms, tend to perform better if they are built around being an electric vehicle rather than taking an internal combustion engine platform and then trying to electrify it. And so we'll see what Ram does, but ultimately, I think it's going to be two completely separate platforms. And then the next really big change is going to be to the suspension. So Ram right now does something that's pretty interesting. Well, Toyota actually does it too now, and that is they use multi-link suspension in the rear end. Now, multi-link has a lot of benefits, right? When it comes to off-roading, it articulates really well, and then when it comes to ride quality, you get really good ride quality. Now, when it comes to payload capacity, it's not exactly the best thing. Leaf springs tend to do a lot better when it comes to just having a higher payload capacity, but then also, durability in the long term. Like how many times, or how many Rams rather, have you seen where their back suspension's kind of sagging because those coil springs just can't quite hold things up anymore? Whereas it will happen with leaf springs too if you heavily use the truck for hauling and towing, but they tend to hold up a little bit better. However, what Ram is now going to be doing is going towards independent suspension. Now, this is for sure going to happen for the fully electric Ram 1500 because that's just what you do with electric vehicles. You have independent front and rear suspension. Every single electric vehicle is like that. But with the regular Ram 1500, they're also going to be going that route most likely to basically set an industry first. Because if you look at the Ford F-150 solid axle, the GMC Sierra and Chevy Silverado solid rear axle, and then also the Toyota Tundra and Nissan Titan, they all have solid rear axles. And so this will be a big first, and it's very easy for Ram to do because we already have the Wagoneer and the Grand Wagoneer that are built on the same platform as Ram 1500 that have independent rear suspension. So they basically just have to take that suspension, tweak it a bit, and then throw it over to the Ram. But a big thing that's going to be a focus for Ram is to increase the payload with their truck, because this is where they lag quite a bit behind General Motors and Ford. I mean, every single time I do three-way comparisons, the Ram always has the lowest payload, and it's by a substantial margin. I mean, with how payloads are set right now, a Ram 2500 has like the same amount of payload capacity as like a Ford F-150 or Chevy Silverado, and so Ram definitely has to increase that quite a bit if they want to stay competitive. So alongside this independent rear suspension, they're going to be beefing up things quite a bit so that they can accommodate a higher payload. And it's definitely possible because the Ford F-150 Lightning, for example, has a pretty substantial payload for having independent rear suspension. And then when it comes to interior upgrades, Ram obviously knows that people love like the luxury base interior that they've released for the 5th generation, so they are going to basically take that whole interior style and throw it into this new truck. Now they are going to make some changes. The seats will look different, the dash will look different, but the whole idea of using tons of leather and tons of wood trim to make it feel like a really nice luxury car, that is going to continue with this truck. And then we'll get basically a carryover of the infotainment system and the gauge cluster and everything with this truck, because they just released the new infotainment system for the 22 model year, and they just released the gauge cluster for the 23 model year. So they don't really need to change all that much with it because it's already new tech. Let's sum things up by going over my overall thoughts on this Ram 1500, and I guess if you should wait for it to come out or if you should just buy a Ram 1500 now. So I think that most of the changes are pretty positive, right? Independent suspension is going to make it so the truck drives even better, and Ram focusing on payload is going to be really important. Now there obviously is going to be some off-road capability losses with independent rear suspension, and I feel like solid axles in the rear at least are just really good for towing. So not having a solid axle anymore, that's going to be interesting to see how that affects overall towing stability and everything. But I'm sure that Ram will be able to figure it out. Now I do think that if Ram fully kills the Hemi, I think that's a pretty big misstep, because Ford still has a V8 in their F-150. Now the 5.0 V8 doesn't sell in very high volume. Most people get the EcoBoost because the EcoBoost has more power. Well, it has the same amount of horsepower, but it has way more torque, and it's just more efficient. And so I think that Ram should just do the same thing with the Hurricane powertrain, just obviously release it, and most people will probably buy it because it's just the superior powertrain, but then you'll still keep the buyer base that just wants a V8, because trucks have to have V8s. If they just get rid of the Hemi, then they're going to lose quite a few buyers, especially if Ford and General Motors are still offering V8s in their trucks. So I definitely would say that just sell both of them beside each other. And then in terms of basically keeping the style somewhat similar to the current truck we have, I think that's also really good, because it's frankly a really good looking truck. And that's, again, what the auto industry is starting to do more so, that's really successful. Again, Ford is a perfect example. If you look at the current F-150 and then the previous generation F-150, like, yeah, there are some differences, but like, it's not like, it's more of like a refreshed look rather than a full redesign, and it sells really well. That's kind of what people want nowadays. Now, in terms of if you should wait, I think it really just depends on what you're looking for in the truck. The current truck is actually it's a really solid pickup truck overall, and it meets a lot of people's needs. And so if it already meets your needs, then like, yeah, I would go get one now. I wouldn't wait. But if you want to have a completely different experience, and if you want some of the new tech that's going to come along with this truck, then yeah, it's probably worth waiting for. But what you have to understand is you're going to have to pay a lot more money with that wait, because with any sort of heavy update in a pickup truck, right, they always get more expensive. And then we're just in a market where things are just continuing to get more expensive, especially on the new car side of things. And so I would expect this truck to be significantly more expensive than the current Ram 1500, which is already like insanely overinflated when it comes to pricing. And so like, don't be surprised if the new, Ram 1500 Limited is like a $100,000 truck spec'd out, with a high output Hurricane powertrain. A lot of you are probably just like got up and like threw up a little bit, but like that's just the world that we live in nowadays. Anyways, let me know what you think about these changes, and let me know what you would want to see from Ram with, either a heavy refresh or, a full redesign with the Ram 1500, because we're kind of getting to that point with this truck. But anyways, I'll see you.